No writer can predict the future, but in today's world, it's almost impossible to tell a story without injecting some pop culture references into it somewhere. They aren't always used properly, but sometimes an inside joke or throwaway line can wind up being more prophetic than anyone could have ever guessed. Are these crazy coincidences or actual planned events? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Here are Screenrant's movies that actually predicted other films. Tuff. To find a new villain to tear Marvel's Avengers apart, director Joss Whedon turned to the super intelligent robot Ultron, a creation brought to life by actor James Spader. His early leading roles as a handsome bad boy were far from Ultron, but in 1985's Tuff, a bit of graffiti offered a strange hint of what lay ahead in the actor's future. The new Avengers tag was obviously a play on the Marvel Comics series, but Spader's character didn't have time to look it over since he was mugged soon after. But who showed up to patch his wounds? That's right, Robert Downey Jr. The two actors shared a scene together a full 30 years before they do battle as Iron Man and Ultron. Following. Christopher Nolan made himself one of Hollywood's most respected directors in record time, but even geniuses need to start somewhere. For Nolan, that was Following, a story about a young man who spies on a well-dressed burglar until he's swept into a life of crime himself. The low-budget movie gave plenty of hints at Nolan's future style. It had a time-jumping structure and a well-dressed man named Cobb, which happens to be the same name as Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Inception. But the tiniest detail is the most shocking one. One apartment the characters break into is not marked with a number, but with the Batman symbol. The director could never have guessed that 7 years later he'd be on his way to making a nearly $2 billion Batman trilogy, one that would change comic book movies forever and even give the leading actor of The Following a cameo in Batman Begins as a waterboard technician. Halloween. In the world of horror movies, there's no understating just how much John Carpenter's Halloween changed the game. The film following the masked killer Mike Myers as he went on a Halloween killing spree would go on to become one of the greatest horror movies of all time. But it also included a hint that Carpenter would be known for more than just one masterpiece. Throughout the movie, the kids are shown watching the 1951 film The Thing from Another World, a story of an alien stranded in the Arctic and the men who find it. The title card alone should tip off horror fans to this strange coincidence, since it's the same movie Carpenter would be hired to remake just 4 years later in 1982. And just like the classic slasher flick, The Thing's place in horror history is set in stone. The Terminal. The story of a stranded airline passenger making his home in an airport terminal was inspired by a real event, but it may end up being better remembered for predicting the future. Among the employees befriended by Tom Hanks' character is an immigration officer played by a young Zoe Saldana. When Hanks questions her for a friend admiring her from a distance, she lets a secret slip.
What do you like?
Conventions.
Conventions? What are these?
Yeoman Rand may be her cosplay of choice, but just 5 years later, the Star Trek lover would be cast as Lieutenant Uhura in J.J. Abrams' big screen reboot. It's a good thing she's a fan of Vulcans, since her romance with Spock would end up playing a major role in the series. Braindead. Long before Peter Jackson was directing the Lord of the Rings movies, he was still trying to find ways to inject big ideas into small-scale productions. In the case of Braindead, the story of an exotic rat monkey whose bite turns people into zombies, Jackson opened the film with a throwback to the classic King Kong. Instead of a colossal ape, it was a tiny creature he was stealing from the enraged natives, but the reference was still pretty clear. Luckily for the director, he would get the chance to repeat the homage with a much bigger budget. The 2005 remake of King Kong may be a more impressive sight to behold, but getting to reference a classic film and then being entrusted with remaking it is any director's dream come true. The Godfather. It's the job of Hollywood production designers and set dressers to make a modern street look like it's been sent back decades in time. Usually their job is well done if you don't notice it at all, but sometimes they're able to make an incredible prediction. When Vito Corleone goes to shop for some oranges just before being wounded in Martin Scorsese's Godfather, a poster promoting an upcoming boxing match is prominently featured in the frame. Once movie fans realize it's advertising a fight of Jake LaMotta, things get interesting. Robert De Niro would win his first Oscar for playing the younger version of Corleone in The Godfather Part 2 2 years later, and his second for portraying LaMotta in Raging Bull 4 years after that. So even though De Niro auditioned for The Godfather and was cut loose, his two greatest roles sharing the screen have to make up for the loss. Raising Arizona. Long before Nicolas Cage and the Coen brothers were household names, they joined forces to deliver Raising Arizona. It's a seriously underrated screwball comedy following Cage's character from a career stick-up man to a loving husband and hopeful father. Part of his going straight means finding a job at Hudsucker Industries, according to the name stenciled on his uniform. Fans of the Coen brothers will recognize the name from the director's other film, The Hudsucker Proxy, set at the exact same company. But Raising Arizona came first by a full 7 years. The brothers had developed the Hudsucker script with director Sam Raimi years before making either film. I decided to plant an Easter egg ahead of time, one that will continue to confuse new fans for years to come. Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Jason Segel proved his leading man comedy chops by showing that musicians don't get dumped like the rest of us, turning to a piano to pour his soul out when the girl the movie's named after breaks his heart. But this is a comedy, which means one song he uses to express his grief took audiences by surprise.
Get things started on the Muppets show tonight.
Segel didn't need to cry for long. Just 3 years after weeping through the Muppets theme song, he would be co-writing and starring in the group's return to the big screen in the Muppets movie. I bet Sarah regrets dumping this Muppet of a man. So what's your take on all this? Coincidences or totally planned occurrences? Let us know if we missed any eerie predictions, jokes, or teases of future films in our comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more Screenrant videos like this one.